Welcome to Editing Practice and Theory. This course will explore the practicalities and theories of video editing, as well as explore key aesthetic approaches to cutting and story manipulation. I am Professor Hogenkamp. Some of you may be asking, why am I teaching this course? Well, I started learning Final Cut Pro and Avid Media Composer before Walter Murch edited Cold Mountain on Final Cut Pro 1. Yes, I am that old. But I have been molding and growing with the changing technology. I have been editing music videos, short films, documentaries, commercials, all kinds of different videos for years. People often think that the new effects and the cool things you can do on the new and enhanced editors are what make videos good. But in reality, those cool effects are just tools to enhance the viewing experience. Knowing the decisive moment of when to cut is what will draw your audience into the story and make your audience love your video. And that's what I want to teach you in this class, is those aesthetic principles that will make your audience fall in love with the story that you are trying to edit and tell. So these tutorials will give you those practical skills in Premiere Pro of how to make those aesthetic choices. Asbury University decided to go with Premiere Pro as opposed to Final Cut X or Avid. So that is what I will be teaching. I do know both Final Cut Pro X and Avid, so if you have questions, feel free to ask. But these tutorials will only be teaching Premiere Pro. If you are an advanced editor, these tutorials will serve as a refresher. So don't be afraid to watch. Let's jump right in now and get straight to it. Before we open up Premiere Pro, there are things you need to know about editing that will affect what you do in Premiere Pro. First, I am working on a Mac. If you are working on a PC, it may be a little bit different, the shortcuts and various things that I will be showing you. So just be aware of that. To get things started, I want you to first look at your desktop. On Macs, it doesn't work the same on a PC, but on a Macintosh computer, your desktop and all the files on your desktop actually take twice as much space as the normal file takes. So if you have a messy desktop, that will affect how your machine operates. It won't be operating as fast. And so simple little documents like you see these two PDF files will actually slow down my computer. So as a good editor, I will keep a very clean desktop and I will put those into the appropriate folder on my machine, and that will actually free up space. So now you see I have a clean desktop. We will start going in. Now I have on a card two example files. One was recorded on a C100 and it was recorded in AVC HD. This is a very common video format. The other was recorded on a C500, and this is another common file type of how a camera will record information onto the card. Now, you notice that these folders, the AVC HD is in a folder called Private. There are actually a whole bunch of hidden files in here that you can't see that are embedded into the AVC HD file. In contents, you can see in the C500, you can see that there are a whole lot of files in here that you're like, what the heck are these? What are C.cif? What are CPF? What are XML? What are XMP? What's a SIF file? Those are all files that your editor needs. So when you are editing and when you transfer files from the card to the external hard drive that you're working on, you actually need all of these files. Second note is you need to be editing on an external hard drive. Don't edit on your computer because your computer has usually one disk that is spinning the hard drive. Sometimes it may have 2 or 3 disks. If your computer has 2 or 3 spinning disks, or they may be solid state disks, it's okay to have your footage on one of those disks and your editor on a different disk. It's the same exact concept of having an external hard drive. You have one disk that is spinning and then another disk that is one disk that is spinning with all of your files on it and another disk that is spinning to run the application. If you have both your files and the application on that one hard drive, whether it is solid state or if it's a spinning hard drive, then it will slow down your computer because your computer has to process more information. So always, always, always edit on a different hard drive than the application is stored on. My computer only has one hard drive in it, so I always put all of my files onto a separate hard drive. I'll be working off of my husband's external hard drive here. So when I transfer these files over, I'm going to create a bin. It is very, very important to be extremely organized when you are editing. And you'll want to create all kinds of files and folders. Why? Because the people who created these editing systems were extremely OCD. So you have to follow their brain logic. If you don't, you could cause your system to freeze up. Your project will more likely crash if you have unorganized file structures than if you have a very organized file structure. I have a lot of students come to me the day their project is due and say, my project crashed last night at 2 o'clock in the morning and I've lost everything. And then when I look at their files, I see that they have stuff everywhere. There's like video footage on cards that wasn't transferred over to hard drives. There's files on the computer's hard drive. There's files in 12 billion different folders. And I'm like, well, no wonder your project crashed because you have stuff everywhere. Your computer is searching so hard to find all your files, it corrupted your project. So simply having an organized system will prevent that crashing. Editors have to be extremely, extremely organized. So we're going to go ahead and we are going to create a folder. I'm going to call this folder the tutorial examples. And then within that folder, I will create several different folders. I will create video files folder. I will also create a separate audio files folder. I will create a Premiere sequences, see if I could spell sequences, folder. And we'll start there. We'll probably add more folders later. If I have photos that I want to add to my video, I would create a photos folder or various different file folders for different file types. Let's go ahead and click on video files. And when I copy from my card over to my external hard drive, as opposed to going in and just choosing the clip that I want and just taking this MXF file, I actually need to take the whole entire folder. So I will actually drag this entire folder called Contents over here to Video Files, because your editor needs all of those hidden files and all of those files that you're like, what the heck is this? What does this mean? Now, if you have multiple cards that information is coming from, within your video files folder, you'll need to create more folders so that you don't just have a contents folder and another contents folder and another contents folder, because that will start to get confusing. And you can name these files anything that is logical to you as an editor. When I'm editing a feature film, I'll often name my files, my folders, day one of filming, right? Because we're usually filming for 20, 30, 40 days. And then I will put that information into that contents folder. The information that I just transferred in there was actually footage for a spaceship commercial, so I'm actually going to rename that spaceship footage. The information from the AVC HD files is actually a commercial I shot for an art gallery, so I'm going to name that art gallery footage. And I will drag the whole entire private folder over to the art gallery footage file. And this is to keep all of my information organized. Now that I have all of my files organized, I can open Premiere Pro. Now in Premiere, there are always 3 to 5 different ways to do the exact same thing. I'm going to show you some of the beginner ways, also a few keyboard shortcuts that will make your life easier. So when we open Premiere Pro, you always start a new project, and it is very important here. A lot of people go ahead and just hit OK, but you need to tell your computer where it's saving to, else the computer will decide for itself. First, I will name this project Tutorial 1. And notice in the locations, this is currently saving to my computer's hard drive. Remember I said earlier we do not want that. So I'm going to go and put it on my external hard drive. Remember the Premiere Sequences folder that I created? This is where I'm going to put this new project. And then I'm going to click over here on Scratch Disk and make sure that this captured video, captured audio, video preview, all of these folders and files that Premiere Pro is going to create are going to the same place as where the project is. Else it will put all of these files onto your computer. And if you ever take this external hard drive to another computer, you will be missing files. So make sure that Scratch Disk is set to same as project. Then you can hit OK. So now we have the Premiere Pro workspace. This is called a workspace. There are various workspaces within Premiere Pro. There is the assembly workspace, there's the editing workspace, which I prefer to work in the majority of the time. There's the color correcting workspace, the adding effects workspace, the audio editing workspace, the titles workspace. There's various different workspaces that you can click on. I prefer to use the editing workspace. Then to import your files, you can come over to the media browser. Remember, I had all of my files on the external hard drive. So I will open up the external hard drive here to my folders with my video files. And I need to open this up. There we go. There are my video files. So I will drag down my video files. There is my spaceship file, and
you see, you don't see the AVCHD or the files under here. They pop up over here, right? And so I can choose which files that I want to drag down and drag them down. I'm just going to drag down 2 or 3 down here to get them into my workspace. And once I have all the files down here that I need, then oftentimes I will close the media browser. In fact, I'll just turn it to my effects controls so that I can do various forms of editing. And I can narrow that down. Now, in your project 1, you'll actually want to keep this organized as well. If you are just working with 3, 5, 10 files, that need for organization is not important. But when you start editing a documentary, a feature-length film, even a short film, sometimes even a commercial, if you have 20 different takes of one shot, you're gonna want to keep this organized. So I will create folders within this, they're called bins actually, within my project window here to keep my files organized. So I will have a video files folder here, a video files bin. Within my video files bin, I will create another bin, spaceship shot, right? And I will drag my spaceship shot to that folder. I will create another one, interview footage from the interview I did for the commercial. Let me actually go back and grab some B-roll, and I will create, actually while that is processing, I will create a B-roll folder, which I will, a B-roll bin, which I will drag into my video files folder. And we'll just grab some random B-roll of the artwork and drag that down in there. So you notice that I even keep my files within my project window organized. I will have another bin for audio files. Within my audio files bin, I will have bins for sound effects. I will have, if I've recorded audio separately, not on the camera, then I will start a bin called, normally I'll just call it, off-camera audio or whatever is logical to you. This is the thing with organizing your files, is whatever you name it has to be logical to you as the editor. So what I would name my files will be very different from what you will name your files. So I keep this all very organized. I even create a bin for the different timelines that I will create. We will get to that later, why you may need various timelines. But I create a folder even for my timelines. Now that we have our Premiere Pro session organized and we've got footage imported into our project, we can start editing. So to start editing, you have to have a timeline, right? All your footage goes onto the timeline, which then shows up in your program window up here. I'm going to actually shrink this down so I can see my program window. I don't need my media browser now, so I'm going to shrink that down as well. Just kind of even these out. And there are several ways to create a timeline. Now, why do we need a timeline? Because these are not still photos. Well, you may have still photos, but we're viewing it in real time. We exist in time and we can't get away from it. Therefore, there has to be a timeline for how people will view your project. Various ways to create a new timeline. You can click here on New Item and go up to a new sequence and create one that way. And when you're creating a new sequence, notice there are various presets, and depending on the type of footage that you're working with, which will determine what sequence type that you need. We have some AVC HD files, but we also have some Canon XF MPEG-2 files because we have both footage from the C100 and the C500. You can mix the two, but it will process it differently. I will go ahead and set this up for the AVC HD. We shot this in 1080p, and I believe we shot this in 24 frames per second. So I will go ahead and click on that sequence. I'm going to name this sequence the test sequence, since if I could spell there, so I can just show you what I'm doing. And I'm going to drag that sequence into my timelines. Now we need to put footage into that timeline. So I will just go to my video files and start searching for the files I want and dragging them over. It is as simple as that. The next and most important thing you need to do once you have edited your project together is to save. Keyboard shortcut is Command S. You need to do this frequently. Frequently hit Command S. I have gotten into the habit of hitting Command S about every 2 to 5 minutes when I am editing, because you never know when something might happen. Your computer will freeze, your electricity will go out, and you can lose everything. So hit save and save often. Now, once I've saved my project, I am actually going to go up and hit Save As. And I create a duplicate project so that tomorrow when I open the project, I actually open a new file. Let me go ahead and save this and I'll explain why. A lot of times when I do this, I'll label it by date. So we'll say tutorial 1, actually this is 12-30-16, and I will make sure I am saving that in my Premiere Pro sequences folder, and I hit save. And now that I'm finished, I can close out my project here. Now, why do I do that? Why do I save a duplicate of my project? Because tomorrow when I come back, I'm gonna open this file and I'm gonna start editing on this file. Why do I do that? Because I cannot tell you the number of times a file has gone corrupt. I've been working for months and months and months on a project, and all of a sudden my project file, because the electricity went out or somebody breathed on it wrong, went corrupt. And if I save a new project every single day, I at least have all the work I've done up until yesterday, right? So I'm gonna, so every day I'm gonna go and I'm gonna save a copy. I'm gonna first save this, and then I'm going to save as, or save a copy, and then I'm gonna label it the next day. And then, so if one of those goes corrupt, I at least have everything I've done up until yesterday, and I've just lost a day's worth of work. I haven't lost 4 entire months of work. Trust me, I've lost 4 entire months of work before, and that is why I started doing it this way. And this is just a safeguard that editors use to prevent losing all of the work. I will frequently do that as well with my timelines, with my different sequences. So say I've come back the next day and I am wanting to start a new sequence. I come in and I make a duplicate. I hit Control, which is right click, and then duplicate. You could also hit Command D. There's various ways to make copies. And I will, label this by the date, right? Because say, and this is not, so my sequences, well, sometimes they'll go corrupt, but sometimes I just, I edited and then I changed things, but then I look at it and I'm like, well, I don't like that change I made. I actually like what I did 3 days ago. So I can go back to that sequence that I had 3 days ago, find that edit, copy it, bring it into my new one, and I haven't lost that 3 days worth of changing, and I have it. And I can go back and quickly change it. So those are just tips and tricks of editors use to safeguard their projects. Today was just your introduction. Next week, we will go over how actually to get into the nitty-gritty editing. So see you next week.